Hey everybody, this is Andrew Hartman, coach at Dulles Academic Decathlon, and today I am partnering with Xathlon to bring you guys a inside look at how we prepare for the school year, for the decathlon year, down at Dulles. We really think that there's a lack of content for Academic Decathlon out there. There are no videos, there are no podcasts, there are no resources outside of, what USAD and Xathlon and Demodec are bringing us. And so what we wanted to start doing is trying to push out more content, more multimedia content to students and coaches to A, help them get better at decathlon, and B, to hopefully create some sort of community around it. The old message board, that we had is a lot slower than it used to be in terms of people being active in it. And part of that might just be, hey, it's a message board, right? Who's on message boards these days? So we're gonna try to create a community, just kind of on the internet at large, by bringing you guys hopefully consistent content, whether that be through videos, whether that be through podcasts, whether that be through articles and blog posts and things like that, and also just to kind of collaborate and communicate with people. The best part about decathlon is getting to learn from other people about how they do things, and kind of grow together as a community like that. So today's video is going to be about scheduling and preparing your school year. We have been fortunate enough down at Dulles to be fairly successful the last few years, and so I'm going to kind of take you guys through what we've been doing over the last 3 or 4 years that has brought us a lot of success. A lot of this goes back to the fundamental baseline of this goes back to my time competing at Pearland when we won a state championship my senior year. And that content is the foundation of what we do. We've certainly stacked on top of that. We've added a lot of different things. We've taken away some things here and there to kind of fit the profile of Dulles. It's a different school with different kids. It's not as big, so in terms of how we recruit is very different, and we'll talk about all those kind of things in different videos and different podcasts. But what I wanted to do is kind of take you through the process of how we prepare the year and why we prepare the way we do. So the fundamental backbone of our philosophy at Dulles is that the kids have to read every night. They have to read. It's really a non-negotiable. And so if we start from there, with a 500, 600, 700 page curriculum, that feels like you're tackling a pretty big beast. Well, you can really kind of cut it up. You don't have to eat the whole thing at one time. If you're gonna do this, you can't expect to cram the week before meet and expect to see results that are at the level that we're, at least at Dulles, that we're hoping to get. There are some schools where, hey, you can qualify for state quite possibly off the back of cramming for a week or two, but that leads to a lot of burnout. That leads to not really the best score you can get. Is there some cramming involved? Yes, but that should be on top of a pretty consistent diet of bite-sized chunks of the material of the curriculum. So that kind of leads into the idea, okay, so hey, we think that the students should read a little bit every night, right? Well, how much is a little bit? So this took a lot of tinkering and a lot of kind of playing with, and even now I'm not necessarily certain that it's the right amount. But what I've kind of come to find over the years is that I feel about 6 to 7 pages a night um, is about the most you can get for the students, um, especially if they're at a very particularly competitive school. If you're at a school where yes, you have kids in AP classes, but those AP classes aren't necessarily rigorous. Well, you might get a little more wiggle room with that, but that also comes with its own pratfalls, especially when it comes to having varsities. But at any rate, so we figured about 6 to 7 pages is correct. It feels good. It tends to be just enough for the kids to really feel okay with how much work they're doing and not overwhelmed with all their other stuff. And we have recently, last year and this year as well, we've also really tried to lighten that load come test days for other classes. We have a right around every progress report every 3 weeks or so. All of a sudden, a lot of teachers are just trying to get in an extra test, or they need to get a test in because they're required. And so we've started to try to work around that a little bit as well. It's tough to do because the more you work around that, then you're really falling behind. So, it's a little give and take, right? It's, okay, well, hey, let's maybe read 2 to 3 pages tonight, but then over this coming weekend, you're going to really go at it. You're going to get, 10, 15 pages in over this weekend, or something like that, right? Trying to find that balance for the kids where, even at a successful program like Dulles, we still struggle with getting students simply because they believe that it's, decathlon's going to get in the way of their success as a student, which maybe is something else worth talking about. If, as a resume builder, decathlon, being successful at decathlon is I think one of the best things you can have on a resume. But at any rate, so 6 to 7 pages a night. Be flexible, with that number. Don't stick to it to the T. Although for the most part you do need to stick to it, because if you waver on that, if the students kind of push back on it and then you buckle, there's something to be said for losing that confidence of the kids, right? If you feel confident in what you're doing, the kids are going to feel confident in what they're doing. Which I think takes a lot of time. That's not necessarily something you're going to get the first day, or the first year. The first year we did this, we took a 2-week break in the middle of October, and it was disastrous, just because the kids were fighting us, and it was a mistake I definitely learned from that we'll never do again. And so I kind of going to show you a finished product right now of our calendar, and then kind of work backwards. Okay, so here is a preliminary finished calendar for this year for Dulles Academic Decathlon. As you can see here, we start with music and economics. They do a little bit each night. So that will take us into about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5.5, 6 weeks. So that'll be a really long process for us to do. But in previous years, we had thought to maybe do easy stuff first and then hard stuff later, and we ended up being really good at that, pretty good at that easy stuff. But so is everybody else. So our theory for this year is, hey, let's go with stuff that's a little harder first, and then that gets us a quicker time to rehash it later, and then it's a little more embedded, hopefully, by the time we get to practice meets. So, the first thing I want to point out is I said 6 to 7 pages earlier, and if you're observant enough, you should recognize that a lot of these are more than 7 to 8 pages, or 6 to 7 pages. Music 7 to 13, econ 6 to 9. That's somewhere in the range of 9, 10 pages. 10 to 14 and 13 to 17. That's about 7, 8 pages. And so as we kind of go through here, look at this one: 7 pages for music alone, and then another 8 on economics. And so it might already sound like I'm a little disingenuous. Well, no, that's not quite the case, because what is happening is I am taking these resources and I'm breaking them down into purely what their text is. Now, in a lot of these resources, the images and the timelines and the whatever have yous take up a lot of space, especially when you look at SOSI. The back end of SOSI is just a huge timeline, which might be important, but also I'm pretty sure is just covered in the rest of the resource, so it's really not that important. And so what I do, and I'm not going to be able to show you guys just in case of copyright issues with USAD, we don't want to get in trouble there. Basically what I do is I take each page and I break it down into blocks of 10. So I cut the sheet in half, figuratively, not literally. I cut the sheet in half. That's each two parts. We usually have two columns with some exceptions, such as literature excerpts, and I believe art excerpts also as well might be like that, or I think it's music excerpts. And so I cut it into two, and then I cut each of those two into 5 units, right? So each page, usually a paragraph is about a fifth of a column, a decent sized paragraph. And so that made me think, well, hey, why don't I just break this into a body of 10, right? So each page is broken into tenths. And then I take those tenths and then I try to evaluate how much text is from each of those tenths, right? So if you can see here, I'm on SOSI, and I finished this, and it was, it's fairly detailed. But as an example, the Prosperity and Liberalism introduction section is 0.9 of a page, so it's almost a full page. It's about 90% of a page, right? Fruits of War is a page and a fifth, right? 1.2 pages. Post-war economy, 0.5 pages, etc., etc. Now, there are some exceptions to saying the images don't matter, and probably later down the line, looking at the images and especially looking at the descriptions of the images will matter, but for right now it doesn't. But when you're talking about music fundamentals, especially with the keyboards and the circle of fifths and the Hornbostel classifications, right? There are images that are important. Science also has a lot of important images for certain, but SOSI, it's a bunch of old dudes, right? It's a bunch of people doing things, right? Not super crucial to understand what the image is doing itself. So it pays to kind of cut it up. And so I'm able to do that with each section. So we cut the resource, each page, into a certain amount, into tenths, and then we kind of sum all those up for each resource. And we see how many actual pages of text, of reading, it is worth. And so for SOSI, I came up with 49.5 pages. That is how many pages worth of text, of pure text, there are in this resource, which is a lot less than the number on the page, which it ends at 73 and it goes into the 80s or 90s or even hundreds with the timelines and the glossaries and stuff, which are not necessary at all. And so that leaves us 49 and a half pages worth of material, which if we divide by 6, we're talking 8-9 days, which is a lot better than if we were talking about dividing 87 pages or 90 pages by 6. So that makes things a lot easier to kind of get to the kids and allows us to really justify creating a schedule that looks a lot bigger than it actually is, right? So this here is our finished schedule, and I kind of talked about breaking it up into 2s earlier. There's some days where I can't do that, and there are also some days where usually we like to partner up resources, so music and econ here. Well, econ finishes before music, so we have a full week of just music, and then we take a test at the end of it, and that test is super important as well, and I'll get to that later. And then we start on art and SOSI, which are relatively the same length, and hopefully we get all that done, hopefully before our first practice meet, which means, hey, 4 resources down by the first meet in October. That's pretty good. I'm 100% happy with that. I actually thought it'd be closer to 2.5, so that's very good. We keep doing that. The working with Rosencrantz and Guildenstern Are Dead is weird just because of the size of it. It's large, but also it's not. So I'm not exactly sure how much the kids are going to be able to read in a night. But we've already read it, so I'm not going to. I'm gonna ask them to finish the book in a week, but I think that's pretty reasonable. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at with this schedule. And this is a finished product, as I told you. And as we'll see here later on, once we will start our second read through this semester, and even during the Thanksgiving break, they're expected to read. But we definitely want to make sure we hit music again. It's super important, so we want to get through that again as quick as possible. And then we have 4 or 5 days, and then we set the team here. So we're not going to ask them to review a lot right here. We're going to ask them to work on subjectives, because we're going to do a little subjective, intramural meet, inter-team meet before we do this. So now what I want to show you guys is how I got to this schedule and how I got to kind of figuring out the timelines and stuff like that. Okay, so we understand what the page breakdown is. We understand exactly how many pages they need to read, and also I will make that freely available to anybody who contacts me and wants to get a hold of that chart that I have. I will gladly give it to anybody who needs it. It's a resource. It's not my intellectual property or anything. It's just something that I use, and I, again, gladly give it to anybody. And so I can use that then to build a schedule for the team, right? And so as you can see here, I have a blank slate calendar, again in Excel, right? It's just easier to do in Excel. It's super flexible, right? I know a lot of people, a lot of teachers like having their calendars prepped out. Well, in my opinion, the best way to have a calendar is 100% in Excel. Honestly, everything in Excel is better except for, pure writing. So anyways, so yeah, I have this schedule prepped out for only the first semester. A lot of things change when it comes to the second semester when we kind of set the final team and stuff. And so you can also see on the right here, I have my district calendar. And so this is also incredibly crucial to planning this out properly, because there are obviously some days they're not at school, but also some pretty crucial dates in terms of report cards, in terms of progress reports that we really need to know, because that's when things are going to ramp up for them, at least at Dulles. That's when things are going to really ramp up for them in their other classes, and where, as the decathlon coaches, we need to maybe take a step back, let them make sure their grades are good, make sure that they're not any more stressed out than they need to be. Will it harm us in the long run? I don't think so. I think it's good. I think it helps the kids feel a little more comfortable, and this decathlon can be very exploitative. I feel that there's a lot of times where we're not necessarily thinking about the kids' best interests. We're just kind of there to get the best result. And so, well, I do think it is in the kids' best interest to win. I think that feeling of victory is pretty important. It's also, how you got there, right? I'm sure there are teams that have won state titles, that have won national titles, that did not feel good about it, that didn't have a good time doing it. And so by giving us that flexibility, or giving the kids that flexibility to go and get the work done they need to get done without worrying about it, I think that really makes the program and their experience in it a lot better. So at any rate, you can see I have these color-coded in exact relation to what our calendar is over here. So we actually don't start until Wednesday the 15th. It's the first day of school. How much are you going to get done there? Who knows? We're lucky to have a lunch period, so we'll have them for 2 hours or so. Close to 2 hours, about an hour 40, I think. And so that allows us to still do some stuff here, but I'm not going to ask them to have something studied for that day. Maybe I will. I don't know yet. Hopefully they're all in town by Tuesday the 14th, so I can say, hey, look, read this thing for Wednesday the 15th. Off day, September 3rd. Off day, September 28th. Teacher work day, October 19th. Thanksgiving break. Kind of have it all labeled out. Then half days, and I'm not exactly sure how long our finals go. I don't know if it's 4 days or 3 days. It's probably 4 days usually. It's like the second half of this day, and then these three. That's usually how we operate in Fort Bend, or at least at Dulles. So at any rate, yeah, that's kind of, this is just the blank slate in which we're able to operate, and figure out a good schedule for our students. Okay, thank you guys for watching and listening and following along with me. Just a quick few hits on the things that we talked about. 6 to 7 pages a night. Make sure that you are flexible for the kids while also at the same time keeping your schedule together. That's really important. You really just can't stop, because if you stop, you lose momentum, and that really prevents you from extending your results in the way you want. And then also just building out that schedule based on your own schedule with the district calendar, and building your own schedule based on the needs of the kids and trying to anticipate those. So in the next video, I'm going to come back and kind of show you guys the other core component of what Dulles Decathlon does. I showed you guys the schedule. And then I'm going to show you the results the schedule brings, which is our team score sheet. It is a really internally competitive, fun thing that I want to show you guys and walk you guys through, that I think a lot of you will like. So anyways, if you like this video, make sure you comment, make sure you let us know, whether it's on YouTube, whether it's on the message boards, whether it's on Facebook or Xathlon.org. Or just let us know on social media. It's been a blast doing this. We're hoping to do a lot more content like this going forward, and consistently. We're hoping to get stuff out weekly to the decathlon community, to promote the community, because right now the community is not really unified or not really talking to each other, and we want to change that a lot. So thank you guys so much for listening, and I will see you later.